Hello friends and welcome to the latest episode of Inside Success. In this episode I'm joined by Christian Hughes, the CEO of MyPeople Group. In my day job as a managing director of a recruitment company, I'm always looking for new ideas and innovations on how to connect people better and enable hiring managers and the candidate a much better experience by matching them not just by their CV but also their personality. I really enjoy speaking to Christian about his earlier career and how his journey led him to where he is now as the CEO of MyPeople Group. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Oh, and just a side note, for some reason throughout this episode I have a ridiculous laugh, which, as people may or may not know me, I don't do in real life. So I have no idea where it came from. And also a slight warning, if you're watching this on YouTube, there is dancing by Christian. You have been warned. Enjoy. We actually are in a room with no windows, and it does look like a police interrogation situation. What crime would you have done? Let's put it that way, for why we're here.
I think the most recent crime I've done was a tinsy-wincy bit of speeding. Wow. I don't want to admit to anything on camera, but let's just say it was a clear road.
Okay.
I was late.
Did you get caught?
Got flashed.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I probably wasn't speeding. I mean, I didn't look at the speedo. I'm a very sensible driver.
I got done at 59 in a 50 because I was looking at the sign ahead which said 60. So I sped up to the sign, and that's my own fault. So that's where I got my driver's...
Did you know? What did you get, 3 points?
No, I did the driver's awareness.
Oh, driver's awareness. Are you more aware of drives now?
Do you know what?
Asphalt and...
Do you know what? I think that every driver should probably do it every 2 years. Personally.
This is what my wife said. She said it was actually really good.
Well, has she done it 4 times now?
She collects them. It's like Pokemon cards with her.
So, before we get into the present, let's get to know you a little bit more. So I've done a very quick fire round, so it's just as it comes to your head. So get to know your guest. Here we go. Favourite TV show as a child? As I said, quick fire.
When was I a child? That's a long time ago. I loved Airwolf. That was quality.
Good programme. First song you danced to?
Probably Aha, Take On Me. Classic.
That is a classic. It's a very classic. So we are beginning to understand your...
Yeah, era.
Yeah, the early 2000s. Your guilty pleasure song?
Oof. I mean, how guilty?
As far as you want to go to admit in life and tell humans.
I quite like Shania Twain, Feel Like a Woman.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Let's discuss.
Yeah. I mean, the operation's been a success.
Okay. Is it the line, man, I feel like a woman? Is that the piece you quite like?
No, I was really labouring on the word guilty when you said guilty pleasure rather than the pleasure aspect of the song.
So is it a karaoke song for you as well, or not?
Well, if I was going karaoke, it would be Purple Rain by Prince, which I've performed on a number of occasions, not most recently in 2019 in Tokyo, in a karaoke bar. Absolutely cleared the room. Everyone left.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I'm pretty bad at singing.
Yeah, but it's what I like is you're a committed karaoke singer.
That's the only way to do karaoke, in my opinion. Yeah, you go all in, or you don't bother.
I got banned from karaoke in our local pub for doing Rabbit Rabbit by Chaz and Dave, and you can't really mess it up because there's only 2 words.
I was about to say, it's not a hugely lyrically diverse song, is it? It's quite narrow.
It is quite narrow, but they still didn't quite like it. Anyway, it's about you, not me. Favourite family holiday destination?
Ooh, probably Amalfi Coast in Italy.
And why? Any particular reason?
Just spaghetti vongole, Fiano wine, amazing views. I mean, I don't really know where my kids are in this story, but in my mind they're just having a great time somewhere.
Okay. Next one. Would you rather have telekinesis, so just for those who don't know what it is the ability to move things with your mind, or telepathy, the ability to read minds?
I like to think I have telepathy already, so I'll go the first one, which I won't try and pronounce.
Telekinesis. I had to practice that 3 times this morning.
I felt like this was not the first time you said that.
No, because when I said this morning, it sounded like a Greek island.
Yeah. I presume you were doing it in the shower this morning, and everyone around you was thinking, "What the hell has happened to Paul?" He keeps saying.
They think I'm having a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Anyway, when I'm telling people I'm doing podcasts, they think I've had a breakdown, and this is just an extension of the midlife crisis.
It's got to be one of the first steps, isn't it? Saying telekinesis in a shower repeatedly.
Okay, and then the next one, this is a good one actually, would you rather have everyone you know to be able to read your thoughts, or for everyone you know to have access to your internet history?
My internet history is pretty decent. So I'd say know the internet history, know the person, so go with that.
Wow, okay. Favourite quote?
Oh, crikey. Are we are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Of course you can.
Good,
Say
that
yes.
helps. I've got a potty mouth. Oh, God, I couldn't come up with anything. I'm probably going to use a quote that you'll use, but it's been taken 10 years to be an overnight success, was a quote by Beyonce. That's top of mind. I'm sure I could come up with something better.
So far we've gone with Aha, Purple Rain,
Yes.
Shania Twain,
Yes.
and Beyonce.
So Shania Twain looks more like an outlier now.
So no, what's quite nice, we're actually getting a true understanding of Christian Hughes.
One of the things I like to believe I'm good at, which no one else does, is dancing. And I am a big fan of the lobster, or the crab, as it's known in my household. And if you have any of those songs playing, those are perfect crab manoeuvring.
Yeah, and obviously we are filming this, so this is now very much on YouTube forever.
Good.
So,
that's what I'd want with this. The crab is important.
Well, for the final outro, you can we'll find the song and you can dance to that if you wish.
No, that's great. That's exactly.
And the last one, to stop embarrassing you and going through your Spotify playlist any further, if a movie was made about your life, who would play you and why?
God, I suppose the temptation is to try and come up with someone really intelligent and better looking than me, but is that possible? I really like the idea. I mean, again, this is not really culturally appropriate, but Morgan Freeman, I just think he embodies a sort of... He always plays those characters that are wise, and I like the idea of being wise on camera, which obviously this will not be today.
I wasn't expecting Morgan Freeman,
No.
so I like that.
Yeah, yeah. Or that guy who played Darth Vader, he's really tall.
So we're going for height.
You
could have Andre the Giant, really.
Andre the Giant would be, but quite strong features. I don't know whether I'd like to be represented in that way.
Wow, we've really...
What about Richard? Is it Richard Breel who played Jaws in Bond?
I was thinking Richard Gere.
Well, he's got grey hair. I mean, he probably doesn't come off on camera, but I've got a tiny bit of grey hair coming through.
A little bit, mate. It's actually the lighting today.
It is. Yeah.
Well, we should probably actually mention how I know you. So, I was at a TRN event, which is the Recruitment Network. What do you class it as? I'd class it as a retreat. I think of it more as just a bunch of people together getting pissed and probably moaning about their industry.
Oh, I thought it was a self-help group. Is it not? That's why I go.
So I'll give James and Gordon their due. It is a very good network, and without them, I wouldn't have had the privilege of having a hangover and then listening to yourself discuss what we will talk about later, which is obviously your business and how it works. And I don't know how you found the event, but you probably sat there going, "Kill me now" at certain points.
Well, depending on which one, because one of them I had to give 4. Crikey, just sorry for any of the people.
That was a chair.
Hearing, that's my chair breaking. Depending on which one, because there's been a couple I've been at, and there was one I did 4 talks in 24 hours. And the first 2 were fine, and they were sort of 40-minute talks. But the latter 2 were day 2 after a significant alcohol intake. And
I was on day 2.
Those were harder.
They were harder sells.
I had to commit hard to those ones.
And and I think obviously people talking to your face afterwards going, "Hello, I'm really interested," and you're going, "Please walk away."
Yes, I am about to have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, okay. So that's how we know each other. And so further on that, I obviously made contact. We discussed your product. And then I put you through the mill with my 2 bulldogs, which is Adam Gibson of 17 Oranges. Adam, hello. Who obviously is a advisor to ourselves on everything recruitment technology. And then Mark Davis, who's obviously from 7 Futures, who I trust with views on behavioural safety, personal resilience and everything psychology based. And you've actually passed both.
Did I really?
Yeah.
God, it cost me a lot of money as well.
Well, yeah.
Adam especially.
Adam's a special case.
Yeah,
Adam's a special
really
case.
A huge amount of money and in a bag as well. I didn't know that was still the way to do it.
Yeah, and it was all clean notes.
Yeah.
Not
sequential.
Not yeah, 100%. So that's how we know each other, and I thought it was a really interesting piece of kit, which we'll talk about later. Could you introduce yourself and talk about everything from a working point of view to up to the point of MyPeople?
Perhaps I'll start by giving a brief summary of what I do, and then talk a little bit about the trajectory, if you can call it that. But I have a background in psychology and data, and I worked in elite sport, working with elite sporting teams from pretty much every part of GB sport now, from cycling through to rowing through to rugby, most recently with the likes of Saracens and teams from the British and Irish Lions. And I have a background in psychology and data, which means they're quite rare bedfellows. If you are a psychologist, you tend to follow theory, and applied psychology tends to be in business and sporting terms, much more about the idea of how people relate. Whereas data is much more empirical, and what you're trying to drive out of data is insights that you can take decisions from. And in sport, there has been a proliferation of those two, a combination of those two coming together, and a proliferation of data impacting how you select an athlete and how you develop an athlete. So if we take a sport that we're both familiar with, and I will get back to me in a second, but I just want to share, man. I'm just not going to touch anything. I believe you're a football supporter.
Yes, I am a football fan.
And is there a particular team you follow?
Arsenal.
I thought it was Arsenal. So nowadays, if we took, say, Arsenal and Mikel Arteta, there are a team of people, you can see them live at the ground, and they'll be working behind the scenes, who analyse every single game, and they join that data up, so that what actually happens in a game, to a tactical model. And then when they're selecting new players and looking at the youth academy players, they're starting to train and develop those players so that they fit the way that Mikel Arteta wants to play. Yeah. And in the olden days, that would have been, a bunch of coaches shouting at people. Now it's very, very scientific. And that extends all the way through to selecting players outside of the club. And it's now become a huge industry. And so when I first got involved in this industry, it was a bit of luck, really. My first job was in recruitment.
Now I understand why you're full of shit.
Yeah. Absolutely trained me in the necessity to present a good story. Or what did you call it?
Full of shit. Yeah.
I did that in London for about 2 years. I was quite young when I started, probably about 17.
Okay. So was that your first job?
Yeah, pretty much.
What did you do before that, out of interest?
I had jobs from like 13, but I finished my A-levels. I was taking a year out to go to university, and I was going to study psychology. I took a year out to earn some money, and then got used to earning some money, because back then you could earn money in recruitment. I'm sure now it's just very difficult.
We're like taxi drivers in London. We're very poor and we have nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
Exactly.
Changed.
Horrible scenario.
Scenario.
Horrible. Well, I mean,
look at us. We can't even afford windows.
No windows. Air conditioning is reduced to just a group of people blowing towards us.
Yeah. And that's how we got.
So that was my first job, and I didn't go.
What market were you in?
IT.
What particular market? Just to bore it backwards.
I want to say, and is this a technology, Visual Basic?
Yeah.
I think I was recruiting Visual Basic
developers. Yeah, that's
for banks.
Right. Okay.
I think I did all right. I wasn't very good at it, but I did all right. My interest, though, almost got in the way in those days, because it was much more of a body. It was going to the fax machine and sending 10 faxes of CVs.
Yeah.
It was much more body orientated rather than the psychology of whether someone was going to do well in a job or not. So I was kind of very interested in sport, and a friend of mine had got involved in sport and said, "Why don't you come and do a bit of work with us?" And that just led to more work, and so eventually I was able to become a consultant and just start working with multiple teams. And that was my journey for a long period of time. And the bit that I was specifically involved, which relates back to recruitment and MyPeople when we get onto that, is about environment. Now, I guess I think this is one of the most fascinating topics. If we relate it back to, say, football, when you think of a player, and this equates to business in terms of skills and experience, we almost exclusively think about, at an interview, can someone do a job? Are they competent to do the job? And that's what we base our interview around. Whether we realise we're doing it or not, we're thinking, That's the question we're answering. The question we should be asking is, how will they perform in my environment? And the two interrelate. So if someone is not competent, i.e. they have not got the skills to do a job,
Yeah.
how they perform in an environment is going to probably be hard, bad is the answer. However, let's assume there's two candidates that have the experience and knowledge to be able to do the job. The next question is, how do they perform in my environment? And that's critical, because you see this in sport where you have someone who's a fantastic prospect and then they disappear off the radar, and you're always left thinking, what happened to them? And the answer is nearly exclusively wrong environment.
Yeah.
So we should be measuring the
wrong
environment.
place, right people, etc.
So that became my speciality. How do you measure the fit of an individual to environment and refining it to get it as quick as possible?
Let's step it back to the 16-year-old Christian.
What a guy.
What a guy. So, so, wow, okay.
And maybe the current version is, but he was more of a dick.
So the reason I'm stepping back to that age is that I've got teenage kids, and from what we're seeing today is that kids are growing up on social media. They're seeing instant gratification. They believe they turn 18, they can be a TikTok star and drive a Ferrari within a week.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm talking to people like yourself is to actually give some understanding that you're now 25?
Give or take 20 years, yeah.
45?
Yeah.
45, okay, and that's a good long period of time to have an understanding of good, bad, indifference, and even today, you're probably not where you'd like to be, potentially.
Well, no one should be.
But you're on the journey with what you're doing now. Yeah. So the 16-year-old Christian, I don't think I'm saying this next bit, is a dick.
Yes.
What did the 16-year-old Christian want to do at the end of his GCSEs?
I finished my A-levels at 17 because I was the youngest in my year. I was in an intake where I was an August baby, and so I was early to that.
Proper dick.
Yeah, proper dick. Absolutely. What did he want to do? I don't know whether I wanted to, like probably a lot of kids at that age, just wanted to earn a lot of money. I didn't know what that meant or why. And I wanted to be in sport. I wanted to do something to do with sport. Probably latent family issues in my mind would have geared me towards psychology and trying to understand patterns of behaviour.
Okay.
I had a family, my mother's French, my father's Irish. It was quite a emotional family, shall we say. So I had an interest in, why did that happen? Like, how did that evolve into a row, which everything in our household did. So probably that was the combination, wanting to learn about people, but I probably wouldn't have articulated it like that. Probably wanted to do something with sport because I was absolutely obsessed with sport, and probably wanted to earn a lot of money so I could have a fast car. That would have been the extent of my ambition.
So would you say at that age it was a enjoyable period, quite difficult, or were you just kind of in that middle ground going, I don't know, what's next?
Yeah, I found that phase very difficult. I was quite introverted at that point in my life, and I was probably more analytical than most of my peer group, which didn't really help me in social situations. So I hadn't found my home at that stage, and I think for about 2 or 3 years I bumbled around sort of recruitment and sort of didn't really know what to do. And one of the problems with recruitment back then was you could earn reasonable money, which would compensate for the fact that you were doing something potentially that you didn't enjoy. And I'm not suggesting for one second that recruitment isn't enjoyable, but for me, I didn't enjoy it, yet I was getting paid well. So there's a sort of conflicting experience versus, this isn't what I want to do, but I'm getting rewarded quite well. How do I make sense of that?
Okay. And then, so what was the kind of, did you always know you wanted to go to university?
Yes, although I didn't like academic study. I wasn't good at... Oh, actually, that's not quite true. I wasn't in a school that promoted being good at school, if you know what I mean. My friends group thought it was very uncool to be good at school. And I was very good at school at 12, 13, 14. And then I learned, I shouldn't really be trying so hard. all my friends think I'm an idiot.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can relate to that period. The kids feel it's very uncool, especially at our age, to actually do well. Yeah. And failure was kind of a tick, rather than a negative to a degree. And you either decided to stand alone and know that your long-term future was going to be guided by yourself, or you ran with the pack and you did whatever they did.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
For sure. I can give you an example. I can remember going to France because of my mother's side of the family, being sent over there at about 11 on my own to go and live with my French cousins. And I don't know how long I was supposed to be there, but I think it was like 6 months plus. And I came back within 3 weeks. But even in those 3 weeks, when I came back to the French lesson in my school, I was probably a year ahead of the curriculum. And I can remember consciously making mistakes in my language and grammar work so that I fitted in, which is a really bad indictment of the British schooling system or my schooling.
So you did you have GCSEs or was it straight to A levels?
Not that old. Yeah.
No, that's what I was trying to understand. Because you said A levels twice, and we never said GCSE element of it.
I can't remember the exact age, but yeah, I did GCSEs.
16, yeah.
I got my GCSEs.
But were they at what you should have got?
No.
As you said, you obviously had the capability of doing it.
Well, I think so, yeah. And subsequently, when I did my degree in psychology, I did very, very well relative to my performance, say, at GCSE. So
my point is not to say that you failed at your GCSE, but my point is that whatever trying to discuss today is that you're not defined by that moment.
Absolutely not, no.
And that's the point I'm trying to get across here. Not to say I don't want to know your numbers, it doesn't really matter, but...
I think the hard bit, the risk of going into a topic that probably isn't the main focus of us today is with the way our sort of educational system is set up, and I've got 2 young kids going through it, it gears us towards exam performance and not interest, and I don't know what the answer is, but once I found my interest, which was psychology, everything became easier. Once I genuinely was fascinated by what I was doing, and it was a real lesson throughout my life, is being interested in what you're doing is very important to how you enjoy your life.
So on that note, how did you then fall into going, right, I'm going to go to university and go down the psychology route? What was that moment? What was that spark? How did that happen?
I think the first thing that I studied before I did my degree, actually, I did a couple of diplomas. I've just been on this constant study for about 20 years now, but my first thing I studied was cognitive visualization, which was something that was happening in sport. Yeah. And there was a basketball group that was doing, there was a study about a basketball group, one of the NBA teams, and they were practicing baskets. And I don't know whether you've heard of this study, it's good 20 years ago, but they got the basketball players to visualize hitting a basket in the changing room, not on the court, no physical action at all. It was in a sort of meditative state, let's call it that. And miraculously, it had an impact on their conversion rates and how often they actually hit the basket in real time. And so there was this sort of moment in sport with, what? Yeah. How can visualization be useful? Now it's very, very common, and the reason for that, I think they link it back to neural networks and muscle memory and things like that, but it's the idea that you can rehearse things in your mind and it has an impact on your performance. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. How do I learn about that stuff? Shit.
So let's stay stuck with them. That was 25 years ago, call it.
Roughly.
Or maybe longer. Let's go with the technology. What was the ability to actually research and find this information? Because let's be fair, the most thing I remember from being in recruitment and having the internet was random things you'll search, let's be honest here, that you shouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, Paul. What might that be?
I think it was like recruitment websites. That was what we were searching at the time.
Yes.
Obviously, we had fast internet in the offices, and that's all we could really find, you know.
Yeah. And who wouldn't want to spend time reading about that?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about.
Career decision making. I think that's what.
Sure.
Okay, we'll carry on from that.
Cool.
So was it videos, or was it something you were introduced to? How did you find that? Because it wouldn't be just like Google it now.
No. So what were we talking about? Probably in the 2000s. How did I find it? I think it was through networks. It was like I was always interested in the stuff on the fringe, like what I guess would have been called innovation. But I think I just went through my networks. I had a range of people who were in sport. I had a range of people who were in the sort of learning and development space. I had a couple of psychologists. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And that got me to, I think it was called the Quest Institute, which is where I studied. And it was fascinating. And then that set on a journey. I then sort of did counselling qualifications, hypnotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy, which is very different to stage. And then it was like, right, I need psychology. I need to become a psychologist. And so I started a psychology degree. So
I went through your LinkedIn and actually found your qualifications. The other one that was on there was where you had a GCE in art.
Is that right?
I think that was on there as well.
I've got one in mechanical engineering,
So that's wrong.
astrophysics, and hairdressing.
So have I taken that from Only Fools and Horses? And,
I don't think there's a GCE. Maybe an O level in painting, MS Draw.
So everything you've done is psychology based.
Yeah.
You went through university,
Yeah.
as you said there. You got first class honours.
I did, yeah.
With distinction, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you did your diploma in cognitive hypnotherapy counselling diploma
Yeah.
with CBT, cognitive hypnotherapy counselling.
I was doing a doctorate in psychology, which I've had to pause whilst I'm doing this business. Otherwise, you'd be talking to the real deal. It goes a lot higher, the expenses, when it's Dr. Christian Hughes.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
You didn't pay for my parking today, so I've caught you right at the right time.
Yeah, just at the point where the inflection point
Well, everything's
could actually be
there.
a big deal one day.
So you said you dealt with, so that's past university, you've dealt with obviously high performing teams. You had Crystal Palace down as one of those teams.
Well, I think for the budget, their work was extraordinary. I mean, tactically, if you look at it on the pitch, it's pretty boring. We were a season ticket holder. Maybe I shouldn't say that's unfair, because I do actually really have a lot of time for Crystal Palace. Wonderful club and wonderful people behind the scenes. The tactical Roy Hodgson model was not necessarily the most exciting, but
It's done the job.
They've done the job, and it's pragmatic.
It's done the job. So in that period, up to obviously starting the MyPeople Group, which year was that? It's 2014.
Yes, I think we got funding in 2019. So from 2014 to 2019 was hard grind years.
Okay. So what was that moment? So what was the job you were in at the time when the spark clicked for MyPeople? When was that moment?
So I'd had a range of consultancy work for a long time with teams and in lots of different environments, and they were all sort of suffering the same problem. And I landed in a role with a company that was going through big organisational change. It was in the sort of wine industry, had about 2,000 employees. And they were looking at productivity, and I started to think, hang on a second, this is sort of connected to some of the stuff that I've done in sport. This is quite interesting. The terminology is different, but it's quite interesting. And then realising there was no data supporting any selection of anybody. And this to me was, like the Wild West. It's arbitrary, basically, at this point. Yeah, this person seems to be able to do it. Let's try them. And to me, that was like, wow, there's no risk management here at all. So that was the point where I thought, I wonder if we could do something here. And then there was a long period of time of trying to translate everything that I'd done into business, which was arduous. And working with private equity firms was a unique experience for me. I hadn't experienced that before. A lot of it was, all of it was driven so much by financial output. And I learned the hard way. You have to translate subjective inputs to objective inputs all the way through to this will make you money here.
Yeah.
This is where you're going to see it. And that was useful training, to be honest.
Okay, so thought came in, how can I transfer the knowledge of the hiring person to the people they're looking for to actually take it from a more human related perspective? Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah, I call it fit first.
Fit first. So what year was that? When did it kind of come to you to say, I want to do this?
Well, it didn't start like that, to be fair, because the first need from the private equity company was, we want to restructure. We want to cut 30% of our workforce. Can you tell us how much can we cut by?
Oh wow!
So it was pretty brutal, and the whole HR department of this company sort of left because they didn't want to be involved in this at all.
Okay.
And I was the data guy going, so what do you want from me here? And that translated over a period of time into what MyPeople was, which was a tool to help you fit an individual into a team. It's basically designed to answer the question, how will this person perform in my environment?
Okay, so I didn't realise until that point that your whole piece was at MyPeople, which is obviously a positive business, actually started out as a negative transaction of how you fire humans.
It's more how many you could fire.
Oh wow, okay.
Like we want to cut the business to X. What can it run on? What's the leanest position it could run on? Which is a pretty dispiriting starting point. It's not a question any human should be answering.
Okay, and that then you were being used from the data point of view was any of your psychology and that background incorporated at that point, or was it just purely numbers, figures, etc.?
Yeah, mainly numbers.
It's very black and white,
Yeah.
transactional,
Yeah.
cut as
Yeah.
required. Wow, that's depressing. How do we make this motivating again, Christian? Okay.
Well, out of that gloom came a focus on, well, why are we having to cut? And some of that is economic and some of that's timing with a private equity buying firm. But a big chunk was we've hired a ton of people who are not performing. So how do we mitigate against that in the future? Or how do we improve this scenario, not just for the organisation, but for the candidate? I mean, who wants to take a job where they're not going to be able to perform?
So let's slightly bring that to the present world. You've now got most major technology businesses firing at will. I've seen it once before in my career on the levels they are at the moment. Probably have seen it, but not in my eye line. Is there a problem in the actual industries we work in where they are literally selling the dream to the investors that they are hiring, which shows growth, and then just firing to raise the share price, just to see again? Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a maturity curve, isn't there, in tech? And obviously having a tech business, I get some exposure to this, whereby the first set of metrics that any investor group, whether that's a PE, VC or private investor, will drive is what's your revenue number, and that's where valuations are commonly in tech. You're not driving off an EBITDA number, you're driving off a revenue number. So what does that drive in terms of behaviour? Well, then you're looking at building and adding people to drive that revenue number, and you're ignoring profitability entirely because you're putting a lot of headcount.
Yeah.
The next phase of that becomes, as you saw with, or we saw with, say, Deliveroo is a great example, whereby they get a mega valuation, and the next set of pressures become, well, it's not sustainable.
No.
How do we effectively make this business profitable? Which then is headcount cost and or price rises. And does the market hold that? If not, then it's more headcount loss. And so you get this really unstable period once you've got a sort of revenue growth position in play.
Okay, interesting. So let's take that to the positive then. So you've gone through that career point. You're now at this stage where MyPeople is a viable opportunity. So there's three elements we're going to go to next. Very simple, which is the what is MyPeople, the how does it work, and the why. And the why can't be money related.
Yeah, no, mine isn't.
So let's start with the what. What is MyPeople, Christian?
Thank you for asking me that, Paul. That's a
We've
really
got
good question.
We're 5 hours in.
Yeah, we're five and a half hours in, 16 beers in.
Yeah.
I've never given that a single thought as to what MyPeople is. So, no, let me try and be serious for a second. So, MyPeople is a software platform designed for recruitment companies, RPO companies, MSP, staffing agencies. And it is a tool designed to assess or evaluate, is probably a better phrase, the fit of an individual to a team. And there's a couple of components here. We believe in a concept called sustainable diversity. And there's a big trend at the moment to drive more diverse workforces. That is an important social agenda, and it is incredibly important from a performance perspective, because we see this in academia, or academic research, that high-performing teams tend to have more diverse people in the team. And I'm not really talking about ethnicity or gender here in exclusivity. I'm more talking about cognition, experience, background. And the whole principle really is a simple one, which is that drives more ideas and more input. That's the theory. The problem is that isn't the end of the story. The second part of the story is about belonging, which is you've got to feel connected with your group and feel aligned to your group, whatever that group is, whether that's a societal group, company or business. So the second part is, how is this person going to fit with the shared values of the team? So what MyPeople enables you to do is say, this person's going to fit into this team, here's what they're going to contribute, here's how they're going to marry up to the values of the team. And for a hiring manager, here's the set of questions that you might want to focus on at interview so that we get a better outcome at interview.
So from the point of view of the actual product itself, is it 210,000 job types in there at the moment, or is it more now?
40,000 job profiles, so you can measure the fit of an individual to a role.
So 40,000.
And the fit of an individual to an existing team or company.
Deploy Recruitment Group provides fast and reliable recruitment across the UK and overseas. We source, screen and deliver quality skilled individuals to meet your business requirements. Using our extensive database, market knowledge, network and latest software, we provide access to specialised talent and address your industry's core challenges. Plan, supply and deliver safely. For more information, please visit our website, deployrecruit.com.
Right, okay. And then from that point of view, that marries off that part.
Yep.
So I've bought the software.
Yep.
I've
Great choice.
Signed over.
Well done.
I've given you the money.
Yes.
Which we have actually done in my business. We'll go into that bit in a bit. So how does it work? You've paid you lots of money. So is it a per assessment basis? Is it a per business? How's that work?
Depends a little bit on the way the organisation's operating, but for a recruitment company, they get their own portal. It can be branded in their own branding. They can then use that with all of their clients on an unlimited basis. And effectively, you could think of it as a way of influencing the interview process, giving you a better odds of getting an interview and getting a candidate to offer stage. Because we're surfacing where the differences are. We're focusing the hiring manager's view and interview format around the questions that you're supplying. So you're taking control over a variable that before would have just, it's 50-50 which way it could go. Okay. Now we're skewing it in our favour. And you can, all of this is sort of self-service with a supporting team from MyPeople that can provide all the background and info.
So I always look at it as I'm a junior recruiter. My companies are going, well, we just signed up to this brand new bit of kit, like a lot of recruiters companies do, and let's be honest here, we're not very good at explaining why we're doing it, let's be honest, and we just go, get on with it. How would you pitch this to a recruiter who goes, it's another bit of kit? What's the benefits to me and my clients?
Well, I think there's a really nice USP here for a young recruiter in that you want to drive a more consultative relationship with your client. If it's transactional, they could pick up the phone to anybody, and you're one of 20 different recruiters who happen to be on the other end of the phone, and it's what's your difference between you and the next person? Here, what you're saying is not only is it reducing the risk for a client and it creates better retention, it's showing that you're interested in the candidate beyond the point of placement. It's giving a better candidate experience, and for you as the recruiter, it's giving you some tools to actually talk in a more consultative manner with your client. So you're elevating your relationship with your client to something more than just here's a CV, here's a body. You're saying that these are the scientific insights that we can provide you to help you make a better decision, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager.
So client A has done the questionnaire. What would you class it?
I call it evaluation, but I don't like the word assessment because that implies failure, right or wrong, which it isn't. Okay. It's more about personality preferences and team preferences.
And how many questions is that to the client?
Good question. I think it's about 54 statements, so they grade them.
And is that a grade, 1 to 10, 1 to 5, 1 to 10?
1 to 10,
okay, obviously 10 being highest, 1 being lowest. And they're looking to do it as a quick fire off the top of their head.
It takes about 5 minutes. Yeah,
5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. So I've done Fire, OB, or whichever one it is, and I've done like 3 different psychometrics.
PQ Gold, OBCR.
OBS, and don't get me wrong, it's really good. Really, really good. Oh my God, it was like 3 hours of my life gone away. And like I say, it was very condensed, very accurate. I think I read it through, and I think I was going to jump off a cliff at one point because it was very brash and harsh.
Is that talking about your musical taste?
Shania Twain and
do you know what?
Beyonce.
I've lost all credibility on that one. I'm just going to walk that back, that comment.
Sorry. My point about it is that they're very thorough, and from a business owner's point of view, they're very expensive.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you go to a client, and one customer will have one view, they would like to go down this route of psychometric testing, and another one to go, I'm not really that interested.
Definitely.
And the reason generally is that A, they know it's long-winded, B, is going to cost a fortune, and C, if it goes wrong one-off, they're never going to use it again.
Yep.
So I think for myself personally, what ticked a lot of boxes, as people will know me very well, A, I'm tight. B, it's got to be cost effective, and C, it's got to make sense and quick for people to understand. I say people explain to me as if I'm a 6-year-old. If I can understand it very basic, the rest of my team will get it.
Definitely. I mean, we're trying to democratise psychometrics. Psychometrics are good, but you've got to make them quick. You can't have a 3-hour layer in the recruitment process, and you can't charge per candidate because that's going to cost a bomb. What you want is that information early doors, really simple, no giant report, just here's where they fit, here's where you might want to focus in your questions, and that's enough to get the conversation moving.
So obviously clients fill theirs in, recruiter gets that resolved back, he then says, okay, I need, let's call it a designer at this stage, goes out to the candidates, puts it on job specs, asks for the CVs back in, and then they've started this process
with the candidate.
Again, how many questions is the candidate?
Same.
Okay.
Same, about 5 minutes on a phone. And once they've done it once, they don't have to do it again. And that data's in the system, which is quite a unique position in comparison to most psychometrics, where you'd have to do them again and again and again for each job. Here it's one time and that's it. And then the system does all the heavy lifting. It says, look, here's how their personality is likely to work in this role. Here's what they bring. And here's how it's going to work within the team. And give some guidance on what to do next.
Okay, so if someone's not 100% match and it says ask further, is it a set of questions that are delivered by the system or by the hiring manager themselves?
So the system will suggest them on screen and then you can export that to the hiring manager.
Okay.
But they're typically designed for interview by the hiring manager.
Okay.
So it's a good piece of toolkit for the hiring manager as well.
Yeah, and I think it's trying to remove time from the hiring manager's point of view, because even us as recruiters, we don't get it right all the time. Let's be honest here.
Stop it.
Well,
you do, but not all recruiters.
Wow, using your system, I've just sacked half the business.
That's exactly what I would have wanted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is how that's happened.
Yeah, this is so good.
Yeah, I've saved a fortune in 24 hours.
I'm back in 2014.
But so from our point of view as a business using it, what we've done ourselves is look at the internal piece, and I think I spoke to you about it briefly, but what we've found is that instead of going, okay, they're not quite right how we should have probably hired them in, it gives us a really good opportunity to actually look at it and go, well, if they've got weaknesses, how do we actually address that as a business? Should we be spending more time with them? And is it us that needs to change rather than the person we've hired? So it's a really nice opportunity as a business to overview our actual current team and give them a view that, all right, you're not quite fit for purpose on paper. You've worked with us for 8-9 years. Have we just put you to one side and gone, it's all right, you're doing okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a lovely client story recently, which I thought was fascinating. And they were about a 40-person recruitment business looking to scale to 70. I think they were in tech recruitment. And they had an exercise where all of their hiring managers internally completed this.
Yep.
And they then did sort of the highest performers all went through as a candidate. So effectively they had two sides: the directors completing as hiring managers, and the existing employees completing, high performers completing as candidates. And there was this amazing correlation across all the high performers, although they were entirely different in the way they did the job. So, for example, one person was hugely service-led and had this phrase, service before profit. And at the other end of the spectrum, they had a guy who was purely motivated by deals and money, both high performers. But what sort of glued them together was a sense of purpose. There was a massive reason why they were doing this, and this came out in all their results. And so they were able to say, right, there's 3 non-negotiables when we're hiring, and one was purpose, one was results orientated. So that result could be the client is happy, or it could be I've done a deal. It didn't matter what the result is; it matters how results orientated you were. And I think customer service was sort of the third. So they created their profile off the back of that, and huge increase now in terms of the retention and the speed to productivity they're getting out of new hires.
Because I think as recruiters, we're kind of, as someone said earlier, we're kind of the best and worst of the kind of what we do, because we're really good at advising our clients on what they need and what they should have. We're very convincing on that, but we're very bad sometimes. I am personally at how we actually hire for ourselves, and structuring that process. So I'm kind of taking your system as a point of view that if we can get it right, then we can actually probably be better advising our own clients, because we actually understand ourselves and as a business and how we're growing, which then should give confidence to the client that we have the best interests at heart for them and the people they're bringing on. Obviously, before you mentioned about EDI, we touched on briefly. And again, do you feel that the MyPeople system could just remove that grey area of why people are not getting interviewed because of potentially their name or their background potentially, or their culture, let's call it?
Yeah, it's very difficult, I suppose. If you think a little bit about the hiring manager, or have it from the hiring manager's perspective, if someone said to you, we want to drive X diversity agenda, I don't know what that might be. How do you do that? Yes, there are things you can do with your talent pool, and yes, you could look at that relative to where you're hiring. But now we're in a more global way of hiring where people work from home. Yeah. It's much harder to say, well, we're recruiting from this geography, and within that geography, here's what the demographic looks like. It's not quite as simple as that anymore. So it's a very difficult scenario that you're faced with as a hiring manager, because the other side of this is they've got to be able to do the job. Yeah. No matter how much diversity we bring in, if someone can't do the job, then that's going to be problematic also.
Correct.
So that's where I think the MyPeople tool can fit in. It can give you a non-biased focus on individual personality traits, behaviours and values, rather than where they come from or how they approach the world. So that's where it becomes useful, I think, from a DE&I perspective.
So if they remove the word from interest, Shania Twain, Beyonce and Aha, they've probably got a really good opportunity going forwards. That's the sweet spot.
I think we're looking at this the wrong way. You put that into the computer, ChatGPT, I bet we get something amazing.
Interesting. Okay.
So, who are artists like?
Well, no, I wasn't even going to chat about that side, but what's your views on ChatGPT and basically the future of not just hiring but education? What you can cheat your way, let's be honest, to a CV now.
Yeah, I mean, mega. I mean, in my discipline, which is probably the only one I'm competent enough to at least have a view on, psychometrics can be falsified by ChatGPT. It can complete an answer in any which way you want in order to get an outcome, which is mad. And the same goes for setting them up. You can create a psychometric that's biased to recruit certain types of people, which is mad as well. So yeah, for me it's useful because ours is about preferences, so ChatGPT can't do anything about that. Yeah. But for traditional psychometrics, it's real problematic.
So what we're saying is, from your point of view, yours sits as a neutral.
Right. Okay. It's about what someone is interested in, which you could try and fake, I guess, but whereas psychometric is designed, especially when you're talking about things like cognitive reasoning, verbal reasoning, which are more about mental acuity, psychometric's designed to attest how someone performs against the norm group. ChatGPT can do that. You say, I want a 1% performance, top leader in the world, go. It can create that outcome in a psychometric, which is mad.
So then the why.
Yes.
Why Christian?
I nearly forgot about the why.
Why Christian?
Well, perhaps we could take it all the way back to 2014 and that restructure. I mean, what a waste. And maybe you could look at the world through the lens of experience, and it doesn't matter. As long as you're grabbing experience, you're learning and growing theoretically. But for me, I just thought, wouldn't it be better if we had some understanding of the person, a bit more of a human-centred approach to recruitment, just looking at the schools, which was much more prevalent back in those days, of where someone had come from, biased me, because I didn't come from a good school, in fact, really bad school, and my degree is not from a particularly famous university or anything like that, so it annoyed me, the idea that you could have people with different starting points and different backgrounds who are disadvantaged just because of their starting point, educationally. So why MyPeople sort of came to be, the bigger mission is, well, we want to put the human back at the forefront of the recruitment process, and no matter how much technology there is in the world, you're still having to interact with humans in a team. Whatever environment you're in, every one of us knows what it feels like to be in a team where you think, I hate it here, and I want to make that feeling go away as much as possible.
Okay, it's a good answer.
I didn't expect that to be a good answer, to be honest.
It is a good answer.
As I started, I thought, can I get Shania Twain into this answer?
Well, she has featured a lot in this.
No, I don't think I've thought about Shania Twain at all until this time today.
Well, it's quite interesting. So actually, one of the final questions was, what would you like your theme tune or out song to be? But I don't need to ask that anymore because we've just found that sweet spot of Shania Twain, Man, I Feel Like a Woman.
I think if we go with that as the outro and then we reconvene in 10 years' time, and if I haven't made a significant transition to a new gender, well, it's all going to make sense in 10 years.
Well, you could actually identify as Shania Twain.
Is that possible? A Jedi version?
A Jedi version of Shania Twain.
That would be the dream.
So we're at the point of My People being up and running. How many recruiters or how many businesses are you working with at the moment?
Yeah, approximately 60. We just had quite an exciting moment now where we've just signed a deal with the largest RPO company in the world for them to use our technology, which is really
useful.
Cool. Yeah, there's about 12, 13 of us in the business. I think we're looking to double in size in terms of people this year.
Okay. And are you using your own tests?
Yes. Which is harder than you think. It's a bit like the plumber's leaky taps, or recruiters recruiting recruiters. It's tricky when it's your own business, right?
Well, and it's also when you've got a software you're selling to the market space as being the way forwards. Yeah. And if you didn't use it.
But it's a funny thing because we took on a head of sales, I don't know, nearly a year ago, and we went through the process with the software, and I was the hiring manager, of course, for the purposes of this process. And when the results came back, I still had that moment of, oh wow, that's so our team, and that is so the values of this team. That's amazing, even though we created it. And I know that's a bit wanky, but the other part of my head went, well, who did you expect it to be? You filled it in, you twat.
So you've got growth expectations. Are you purely looking at the UK or are you looking overseas?
Yeah, looking at international markets, in discussions about sort of global distribution at the moment. As with any business, it's there's moments you're crossing the void where you're trying to expand at the same time as you're trying to make sure you're doing the basics of your job well. So I think that applies to every growing business.
So interestingly, if you're going overseas, are you then having to potentially look at tailoring the proposition due to the different cultures, backgrounds and needs of a country?
The system does that automatically anyway because of the way the inputs are structured. But yes, there's language transitions. We'd have to have language versions. Yes, there's different sort of emphasis on sort of DE&I, for example, in the US is very, very big, and diversity as a whole, I think, whilst it's a big agenda globally, it's a very big agenda in the States. So, I mean, that works, that's great in a way because we're contributing in that area. Sorry, what was the question? 6.
You have to. Shania Twain was the answer. We got there in the answer. There's always the answer.
What would Shania Twain do?
That's a good one, actually. The question was very much on global growth, but from the business point of view, what does it look like in 5 years' time? Is it completely automated into every process? Is that where you'd like it to
That would be my dream. I suppose dreams, you don't have to qualify them, right? In that it's just a dream. But if I had my ideal world, this would be normalised. And I talk about psychometrics becoming democratised, which is a bit of a big phrase, but it just means that it's so normal, everyone does this, and you have that moment where you think, this is such a simple idea, why didn't we do that before? There's so many moments in time with things like that you think, why didn't someone do this before?
Yeah. But is there a scary moment, and this is going into the future, where your system is used in conjunction with, say, AI, and then you have the situation where its computer says no? Is that kind of been thought about? Or
I really didn't want a system philosophically that said no. I think that's because, again, back to the starting point of not disadvantaged starting points, because that's not, I would never claim that, but the fact that people could start from a disadvantaged starting point relative to educational opportunities. I'd hate, therefore, to have a system which effectively compounds what I've been angry about from a younger age. So no, the system is designed to understand how people feel about a team and what's important to them, and then what is in existence and whether that marries up.
So do you feel then, as you said, coming from more of a disadvantaged background,
Wouldn't say
as
a white male, I obviously could never claim that narrative.
Let me rephrase that from a point of view where it could have been easier.
Yeah, I suppose the way I'd probably reframe it, because I don't think my phraseology was very good, but I think probably I had a modicum of intelligence and I spent a long time
What
trying
the
to hide
hell
it.
is a modicum?
A little bit.
Oh, excellent. Why don't you say that? I mean,
A little bit.
That's brilliant. That makes my life easier.
And I'm proving my point. I don't use words like modicum anymore. Maybe it's none of this. Maybe I was just a dick. Maybe I just did not want to listen.
So you're basically saying you're now your 16-year-old self, but with new words.
Yeah, longer words. That's
Longer
everything
words.
I wanted. Probably. If I went back to a 16-year-old, what I wanted: a girlfriend, a car, and being able to say longer words.
So have you achieved those now?
She's now my wife.
Excellent. That's a good start. You have a car?
I have a car. Yeah, it's more of a vehicle for carrying children and dogs, rather than anything that provides me with enjoyment. But hey.
But that's really good. And I think we've covered most of everything and the kitchen sink, I think.
We've got through a lot there.
What is
this, six and a half hours?
What time is it now? Anyway, I haven't got a watch. I kind of took my watch off. I didn't want to... what are we into? We are 58 minutes. That's pretty
decent,
cool, right?
Without any stops. That
Much
was just
chaos.
one hit, except for
My phone
the
ringing,
accountant.
which I don't think that'll be in there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you think your accountant was calling just to say, look, why aren't you working? You should be, based on the numbers.
No, this is talking about expansion to the US, so that's why I was intrigued on. So a lot of stuff is discussion around what you do on that.
Well, that'll be very
Okay,
interesting.
so final thoughts.
Okay.
So on a Jerry Springer style, final thoughts.
Summation.
What summation?
Summation. Summary.
Summary, thank you.
It's this stuff, isn't it? It's this stuff. This is what I'm a dick.
Summary. That's lovely. I work. You haven't met Rob Wand, who works for me. He's very similar to yourself, and we look at each other in the office going, "What the fuck has he just said?
What are you talking
What
about?
are you talking about?"
Yeah, I'm going to take that away from this conversation. Try to be able to have people understand what you're talking about.
So, like I say, talk to me like a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
If I can understand where we're going with things, I'll get it really quickly.
Yeah.
I'll get it really quickly. So, final thoughts. We've covered everything from a young age through to your current proposition, your success. I'd like to call it success.
I don't know, I don't want to take up too much time here, but I was thinking, back to your point about Instagram, TikTok, whatever other social media platforms people use to show off on. I was thinking about external success versus internal. Like, everybody that I know that's achieved amazing things doesn't think they've achieved amazing things. And I don't mean they're suppressing it and trying to be like, oh, I'm pretending to be humble.
Yeah.
They genuinely, it's more relief when they achieve. All these sort of Olympic athletes and teams that I've seen win, when they get over the line, yes, there's a celebration, but there's more a sense of, thank fuck. And I think that's what it feels like. You know, when you're straining and pushing, there's a lot more failure and disappointment on the journey than there is wins, and the little wins sustain you for a bit. But I don't know whether I'd ever feel comfortable thinking about the word success as anything other than transitory. You're constantly after the next thing.
So there was an interesting piece that came up. So I think it's the CEO of Bullhorn. He did a presentation. He classed himself as a introverted extrovert.
Yeah, I get that.
Which I googled the other day, and I think I'm a little bit that way. And from what you're discussing, it's very similar. Which is, regardless of, I'll step back one. So I used to call it recruitment numb, which is, didn't matter how successful or how busy or how many placements or people we put on the ground, it just didn't feel any excitement. Does that make sense?
Well, I think there's a big fear that I probably hold, and I've seen it in other people, of it can all disappear in a second. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but I read something about Michael Caine, that he is one of the actors who's worked or been in the most movies of all of the actors.
Okay.
And he was asked about this, and he was like, I was always afraid it was going to end tomorrow, that I wouldn't get offered another movie part, I wouldn't get... And I have a bit of that, and I think a lot of the athletes that I've seen him work with have that in their mind, that you're only as good as your last deal kind of concept, I suppose, in recruitment terms. It's very true, and that fear of not, whatever not means, like not having it, not doing it, not achieving, is always high in my mind.
So do you think that's what's driven you through and got you through some of the tougher times?
I think one of the things I liked about Pep Guardiola recently is talking about humility, and people, I think of that as something that you have to force on yourself, but I think it's a good psychological mindset, and not humility in downgrading your abilities, but more, and talking down of yourself, but more knowing that it's transitory. Like, everything that's great can be not great. You can get, I had a scenario over the last couple of years where my wife got very ill.
Okay.
And, you see in those moments that however great something might be, it can always be taken away. So, what do you do with that? Part of that is about celebration, enjoying the great moments. And then the other part is like, just keep grinding, keep improving, keep being curious, keep being interested. And that usually helps.
So what would you tell your 16-year-old dick of yourself?
Maybe we've laboured on too much of him being a dick. Maybe he wasn't. I mean, probably was.
I think from my personal interaction with yourself, I've not known you that long. I believe you come across as someone who's quite genuine, who cares, and probably thinks about how others can accomplish things rather than actually focus on yourself and probably the achievements you've actually accomplished. Fair assessment? I haven't done the test on you yet. I'll do that with my people one afterwards.
I'm glad I've got you fooled. I am a money hungry. I guess so. It's almost to a fault, I suspect. I think I probably have had at various times more of a struggle being kind of grabby and there's certain negotiations I can think of, the deals that have been structured where I've thought I want them to be all right, and it's been a harsh learning for me coming the other side and going, oh, they didn't approach that discussion in the same way. They wanted them to be all right, I wanted them to be all right, and no one thought about me in this process. So I still wrestle with that. I still don't know how to do that very often.
Okay, but is that more from the point of view your ability to actually know what you want to do as the business rather than being the business person?
Yes, yeah, perhaps that's a good way of saying it. Like I don't know, I don't want to be too philosophical here, but one of the things that I think is quite interesting is drug counselling. And I wanted to be a drug counsellor at one stage because I thought this is a really high value industry. There's a lot of effort that goes into being a drug counsellor. And I learned the hard way. There's a really big difference between the philosophical idea of something and the practical reality, because the practical reality of being a drug counsellor is you get the shit kicked out of you, you get violent clients, you get people who just lie to you all the time because they need a hit. I'm not trying to say anything bad about drug in and of itself. I'm just saying that is a common experience for a drug counsellor. And I think it's true in life. You can have these big visions of how things are going to be, but the experience of it is grunt, it's grind, it's that 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. And perhaps I'm too pragmatic. There might be more innovative people out there than me, but I think just keep working hard, keep pushing. Now I'm sounding like a motivational speaker.
No, but it's you've got to be able to put positives into other people's lives, because if you can't motivate them yourself, then how are they going to follow your vision? How are they actually going to understand what is to be accomplished, what the outcomes are from doing a good job and actually providing a really good service to people? And talking back to drug counselling, I unfortunately had to go to, not for myself personally, but I went along to one of my friends' NA classes, Narcotics Anonymous, and that was a real eye-opener.
Yeah, it really is.
Real eye-opener. And then you've got two ends of the spectrum from a very outside-in look. You've got those that have been horrendously treated throughout their lives and turned to it as an output. Yeah. And you've got those who have taken it to abuse and then blame everyone else. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying on the kicking the shit out of you point. And my friend said to me, he said, the problem with all addictions is that you hit a high, and then you're trying to match it and beat it again. Yeah. And that's where I then suddenly understood the addiction part, that you're looking to get that next hit that matched the highest high you felt before. Yeah. And that could be any addiction. Yeah, totally. And that really opened my eyes to understanding addiction in a whole.
And I think a lot of people are addicted in business. It's the next deal, it's the next, whatever is classified as that win moment, and you get addicted to that. And it's almost mandated in that you have to, otherwise you don't perform very well. So it's such a trade-off. I've always struggled, philosophically, but the sort of Buddhist idea of being in the moment is great, except that to run a business, you've got to be thinking about the future, and you're constantly in different mental time zones going, all right, okay, the retrospective accounts have got to be delivered, I've got to think about the 5-year vision, I've got to be thinking about this and that. You're never in the present, and it's like, how do you marry those two? I don't have the answer. I'm sure wiser people than me do. Well, you must have this all the time, right?
Yeah, so I describe it as how do you get off the hamster wheel to replace the motor?
Yeah.
You know, it carries on there, and then the other line I say is I pray for calm, and all I get is chaos.
Yeah.
So that the moment is always there, but you get consumed with every other thing and the kitchen sink.
I can't think of how many times I've been on holiday, and I've not been on holiday, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I can think of one particular time I was flying out. We flew to a holiday destination, and we were there for about 24 hours, as in the Balearics, and then I had to fly back for a client meeting, and then fly back all on the same day, and then I did that twice on the holiday. So over a 7-day holiday, I think I was there like 2 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is the point?
What is the point? And I still don't know how the end of Titanic happened.
Right.
I had to go and take calls, and I still don't know how Titanic finished.
It just sails off.
It sounds off?
Yeah,
okay,
it's all
cool.
fine.
Well, that's made me feel
Jack
a lot better.
and Rose get married, have loads of kids.
Oh, that makes me feel a lot better now. That's a fantastic ending.
Leonardo DiCaprio's shaved head.
I'm glad we met. And Shania Twain sang at the wedding?
Well, that's where it started to go wrong. Yeah, they had a threesome. We've all been there.
So, wow, and let's finish on that
bombshell.
On that bombshell.
Taking us down quite a dark path.
So we have to not finish. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Have you got any podcasts you're doing yourself at the moment?
Well, there you go. Goodness, without that prompt. I would never have thought to mention it. So I have the Building Great Teams podcast, which is looking at some of the best sporting teams over the last 20 years and talking to those involved to understand what are the things that happened. How did you do it? We've got 2 episodes out. There's another 5 to go in the series.
Okay.
The last episode just came out with shocking sound quality, but if you can get past the ambulances going on in the background, the content's quite interesting.
Okay. Well, Christian,
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. To find out more about Christian's business, please go to mypeoplegroup.com or go to LinkedIn and find Christian Hughes. If you want to find more about myself or follow me, I'm also on LinkedIn as Paul Smith. There is a lot of us on there. Good luck in finding me. Till next time.